Hi everyone, what's up? Josh here from Alternative Brewing, and alongside me today is the Breville Smart Grinder Pro. Now we're going to be doing a review on this grinder to take you through top to bottom, just so you know what you're getting and know how best to get out of buying this grinder. I mean, how to get the best out of this grinder. And of course, liking this video and subscribing to the channel is always appreciated. So let's not waste any more time and get into this grinder review. So let's do a quick overview of the materials used. We've got plastic, a little bit of stainless steel, some stainless steel, and more plastic. Now, starting up top, it's a nice little ring pull on this hopper. I really like it. And it's quite a solid material to this lid with a neat rubber seal around the outside that seals quite reliably to the hopper itself. The hopper holds 450 grams of beans, which is quite a generous amount given the compact nature of this grinder. And what I really like about this hopper design is the foolproof removal of the hopper. Now with the hopper on, it's locked into place and you can't accidentally knock it off or remove it, and the beans are free to pass from the hopper down into the burrs. But if you want to remove the hopper, you just need to twist the switch on the inside of the hopper and you'll simultaneously close the hopper chute and unlock the hopper from the body of the grinder, which means no more messes, which is hopping brilliant. And once the hopper is removed, you have full access to the 40mm stainless steel conical burrs. That upper burr assembly is straightforward to remove, so cleaning out that burr chamber in this way becomes super quick and easy to do. Just be aware for grinder burrs using plastic housings. That is the part that's holding onto the burrs. These are usually the first to break. They're kind of like the Achilles heel for many grinders with plastic carriers. So if your grinder one day just starts grinding crazy inconsistent grind sizes, I bet it's one of these plastic burr carriers that's cracked, causing that issue. Moving down to check out the digital display, this is kind of cool and funky in a retro kind of way. We have the grind time, which is adjustable in tenths of a second using the dial below it. Next to that, we have the shots or the cups program. This is basically a multiplier for grind time. So if you're making more cups of coffee, you'll need to grind more coffee. I don't see this on any other grinder and I kind of feel like it's redundant. You just need to adjust grind size and grind time, and then using an extra button to grind more coffee just kind of confuses the process a little bit, and I wouldn't personally use it. Next to that though is your start stop button, as well as there being another start stop button underneath the chute. Say if you're going to be using a portafilter, you can activate the grinder that way. Now, by far my favorite feature with this grinder is changing the grind. You have 3 separate reference points in adjusting the grind, whereas most grinders really only have 1. First, you have the number that's displayed on the digital display, and the grind settings go from 1 all the way up to 60. And then of course, just above this, you have the scale showing you moving from finer to coarser across a range of several brew methods. And then that last reference point is where you adjust the grind size from the large grind dial on the side of the Smart Grinder Pro. Here it describes further the impact you'll have in adjusting the grind size on the extraction of your coffee, which is really cool. So you grind finer, it says it'll slow the extraction, and grinding coarser will speed the extraction up. However, I wouldn't necessarily have used the terms of the speed of extraction as much as the intensity of the extraction to your coffee. So grinding finer will increase the extraction and grinding coarser will decrease the extraction, as extraction really relates to how concentrated your brewed coffee can be. More extraction will be more concentrated, which means a stronger coffee, not necessarily just a slower one. So as you can tell, this grinder will grind for all brewing methods, with grind adjustments, as I've mentioned, from 1 to 60, from espresso to mocha pot to AeroPress to V60 and other pour overs, to automatic batch brews, to French press and cold brewing. And there is also a further grind setting found on the upper burr carrier. And this is more of a micro adjustment that you may make once or twice and never change again. And this does, for argument's sake, create the possibility of 600 grind settings, but in all honesty, you'll have set it once, maybe twice. I've set it to just its finest setting for espresso, and then that's it. It's not widely spoken about, and it is good to know. However, does it enhance the performance of this grinder? Not really. Further down below, you have the grinder chute, and this has 3 attachments that come with this grinder. First, the grinder bin. Now this has a twist lock lid to it. It's quite a nice solid little container, a flip flap lid to it as well. Placed under the grinder, it will grind straight into it, and it's really clean. There are markings on the outside of this container referring to the amount that you need to grind per cup. This style of volumetric brewing is okay, but honestly, I would prefer to just use a set of scales when brewing coffee, as it will always help with consistency. Next, you've also got a set of 54 and 58 ml Portafilter cradles, which are magnetically attached. No issue using these, and I found it reasonably clean grinding out a full 20 gram dose at an espresso grind setting. Takes around 14 seconds, which isn't too bad for this size of a grinder. And if you do make a mess, well, the whole bottom half of this comes out for ease of cleaning. And then also underneath that, there are further cleaning instructions and maintenance of the burrs and the burr chamber. Now, for how loud this grinder is and its grind's retention. These are just not selling points of this grinder, so I'm not going to necessarily knock it back for being a little bit louder and having a little bit of grind's retention. However, actually a more common gripe is clumping in this grinder at finer grind settings. Not that I've personally experienced that. I want to say that this is an entry-level grinder. And I would add to that it is more of a kitchen appliance than a commercial grade grinder for home use. That on its own is not the issue. The quality of this grinder meets exactly at its price point. It's more in terms of repairs, readily available parts, and its overall durability. These are qualities that I would say come at a cost of, say, another $400. Or when this one dies, you could just buy another Breville Smart Grinder Pro. So in terms of, is there a more expensive grinder out there that will make a better coffee than the Breville grinder? Yeah, of course there is. But does the BSGP do all right to make freshly ground coffee for any brew method available at an affordable price? Very much so. Now, just for fun, I am curious still how the Breville stacks up against something at the other end of the spectrum. So let's take the Niche Zero, for example. That retails around $1,700, and that's also a conical burr grinder that does all brewing methods. Let's make an espresso on both of these grinders and see that flavor difference. Let's jump in and do that now. All right, so we're pretty well tasting side by side the most affordable espresso grinder on the market in the Breville versus probably one of the more expensive grinders in the Niche Zero, which retails for around $1,500 to $1,700. Now, if you're not familiar with the Niche Zero, it is a low retention, single dosing grinder that's super user friendly. And I've dialed that grinder in. It didn't take too much work to do so. And I've also dialed the Breville in. Now the Breville, there was a little bit more of an adjustment to do to get the right grind time and the right grind size. I'm not single dosing with the Breville just because it does have those retention issues a little bit, and you'd have to single dose a little bit extra, let's say just to waste it, to get the right amount out. And I will be weighing in and weighing out today. So I did that with the Niche single dosing. I'll do that with the Breville. My recipe is going to be 18 in, 40 out in 27 to 30 seconds. And what I'll be doing with the Breville that I won't be doing with the Niche is I'm going to be using a WDT tool. Now, these are fantastic little tools. They're very affordable and they can elevate any inconsistencies you might have with a grinder in terms of when there's clumping coming out of a grinder. Well, this is basically a little declumper, and I'll show you how to use this in a second. But what I do hope to do though is perhaps alleviate any of those issues and maybe even bring it up to that level of Niche. But I don't know. Maybe I'll just confuse my palate. We're definitely going to be blind tasting, so I won't know which espresso is which. This is going to be interesting. Like I said, I've dialed both grinders in. It's now time to just pull 2 shots, taste them, and see where we land. Let's do it. Like I said, I'm just gonna purge a little bit out first. Now, I would do this with any grinder when you're not single dosing, just because with that little bit of retention in the chute, that's grinds that have already been ground and have been sitting up there and degassing a little bit. So they're not the freshest grounds. I'm probably gonna grind out, say, 5 grams or so, and that's gonna be my waste. Now, if I was single dosing with this grinder, I would probably be adding almost half a gram to a gram extra in my dose anyway, for the same reason. So this is just something that I would suggest if you're aiming for the best possible quality, I suggest.
Yeah, and then it's not too bad in terms of clumping. Just a little bit over on my dose. But I will use the shot color and the WD-T tool anyway. Just makes those grounds nice and fluffy after WD-T-ing. Now, WD-Ting is a bit of a fluff around, but it really does make such a big difference. Looks good. Super happy with the outcome of that shot. I got 39 grams in 29 seconds. Now for the niche zero. Nice. And I got 40 grams in 28 seconds. So there's a little bit of a variance in the shots, but I'm not too worried about that. I'm just gonna really taste the quality of these. Let's mix them up first, so I don't know which one's which, espresso-wise. And now, let's confuse me. All right, I'm coming back. I think that's enough time. I have no idea which espresso is which. I don't want to look at them either, so I'm just going to make sure they're like level, and then I'm going to taste. Oh, I always think I'm going to like, as I unplug it, I'm going to like knock it off. All right. Breville versus niche. This is going to be super interesting. This will be very interesting. Let's just taste one and see how we go. Start with this one. Super chocolatey, smooth, little bitter. General like nice lingering aftertaste though. It's like a dark chocolate. I'm a huge fan of dark chocolate, so when I say something's bitter, it's got to be like really bitter for me to not enjoy it. I enjoy like 90% chocolate. If it's under 85, I'm complaining that it's too milky. So a little bit of bitterness is not a bad thing. That's quite enjoyable. There's no sweetness to this coffee, so to speak. It's not like an overly sweet coffee. It's more like, it's more chocolates and nuts and so forth. All right, that's not too bad. It's a good start. Next espresso. Actually, I might just have some water. All right, let's do it. A little bit sweeter. It is sweeter, like just kind of like raisins now. Like this has all chocolates and nuts and it's quite creamy, whereas this has initially a little bit of raisins cutting through the chocolate. This is like chocolate and nuts, and this is like chocolate and raisins. So it's sweeter, but it still has everything in it. Most of the body as the first espresso. Probably a nicer aftertaste, I guess, if I would say this is not as bitter as this first espresso, and just that tiny little bit sweeter, so it's kind of like the sweetness is lingering into the end of the shot. But neither of these are bad coffees. That's, woo. Neither of these are really bad coffees. They're pulled really well. I'm happy with like how they each extracted. after dialing them in, I guess. I mean, it was a little bit of tricky getting the Breville dialed in. I ended up on, what dial setting? I ended up on 12 and it took 15.5 seconds to grind out. But after that, the actual dose was pretty consistent. So I was hitting around 18.2 to 18.5 each time. And that time you just saw then, it was an 18.5, so I had to just quickly spoon some off. But otherwise it's fairly consistent in its dose. I was really happy with that. But if I was to choose which espresso was which, I'd probably say the first one that I tasted was the Breville and the second one was the Niche. Overall, again, both really nice coffees, but I would just say that that hint of extra bitterness would have been from the Breville and the sweetness just comes from the Mazza Burrs in the Niche. Overall, probably just slightly better, but really close, like really close. I didn't expect it to be that close. Not that I thought I was going to spit this espresso out at all, but it's super interesting, you know, don't blame your tools if you make a bad coffee. I think there are certain things you can do to alleviate inconsistencies with a grinder. And you know, adding a little extra step, WDTing or distributing to your espresso can make a huge difference. It's time to tell. A white dot is going to say that it is the Niche, and I'm saying this is the Niche. That's interesting. That's not the Niche. This is the Niche. So the extra little bitterness was in the Niche. I'm wrong. Wow. Wow. There you go. I mean, that certainly made a huge difference. I think perhaps WDTing. Not that this video is about WDTing, it's about the Breville grinder, but can the Breville grinder make a delicious coffee? Yeah, it can. And I guess there is a whole bunch of other questions that you might be asking in terms of maybe for its price point, is there a hand grinder that does better? Or perhaps like, can you be making really good filter coffee on it as well as espresso? Does it do both? And these are all great questions. I would probably have to unpack them all in a separate video. But I think honestly, in terms of an automatic grinder versus a hand grinder, you're still going to get value for just being able to grind out without having to do any manual effort of grinding. Certainly, hand grinders have their own benefits being portable and so forth. So weighing all that up, again, I just kind of would have to come back to breaking this grinder down versus a hand grinder. But I'm fairly confident in saying it definitely makes a nice espresso. And for filter coffee, well, the grinds, they look fantastic. So it would then just come down to your brewing technique. Never blame the tools, always blame the barista. But that's the Breville Smart Grinder Pro. If you have any further questions on this grinder, throw them in the comment section down below and we'll get straight back to you. Thanks for watching to the end of this grinder review, and we'll see you in the next one.